Hi, welcome back to Crafting with Kimberly. Today, we're going to be painting with fabric, basically decoupaging. This is an example of a picture that I had made, and you can see all I've done was take different types of fabric, cut pieces out, and made a really neat scene. This came about by finding this piece of fabric. I found that, and that screamed beach and sand to me for some reason, along with those pieces of lace. So then I went through and I said, well, what other kinds of fabrics do I have? This particular fabric was actually, it had boats on it, so I was able to just cut the boat already out. This one had fish, cut that right out. Stars, that screamed sky. I liked the oranges and the yellows of that one. I threw a moon in there too. So this was sun and moon. Very whimsical, so it wasn't meant to be realistic at all. Just all the different fabrics. So simple, very simple to make. Here's another example. I went very plain and easy with this one. Just cut circles for trees, stems. These are all buttons. I used felt for the clouds and then put some beads. I had some string beads that I put right around. Now you can see this one does still fit in the picture frame. It is bowed out a little. You can kind of see it bows out because the buttons do hit right up against the glass. And I used the back of the picture frame to actually glue right onto to make my picture. I didn't have to have another material to do it. I just used the back of the frame. So you could do this with the glass or without the glass. That's your choice. So in regards to supplies, pretty simple. We need some fabric. One thing to look for your inspiration. Find one piece that gives you what your inspiration is, and then you can go from there. This one is a very fun and whimsical print. It has little cars and trucks and airplanes and rainbows on it. This has balloons. This would be really cute to even do like a birthday picture. Flowers, cut out pieces of flowers. I'll be using this. This was a really unique piece of fabric because this is what I used my tree branches, the trunks to be, some flowers. I cut the leaves out to use. So whatever kind of background you're thinking of, this would be a nice grass background because you already have your flowers cut out. So look through your stash, even if you have small little pieces of fabrics that are cut out, that will work too. You can cut your own shapes out. You can use stencils or just draw them freehand. If you're not comfortable with that, there's tons of clip art out on the internet. You could cut some clip art out and then set that down and trace that as a stencil if you didn't already have pre-made stencils. So those are your ideas. You need the fabric. You need pictures if you want to use as stencils or just freehand. If you're drawing, I would suggest a pencil or even a Sharpie pen. If you're using a Sharpie pen to draw your pictures, you definitely want to draw the shape, but then cut on the inside of the line, because depending on your fabric, how thin it is, a Sharpie will bleed through. So then that way you won't have any sign of a Sharpie showing. You can use buttons and jewelry. These are really fun, but you can see the button has a shank. I kept the shanks on a lot of these on that button, but then I also took wire cutters, and you can easily take some wire cutters, sometimes even scissors, depending on what they are, and you can cut that shank off, and that will make it sit closer to the to your background if you didn't want it to stand up so much. But 3D is really fun to look at. I like to, when I'm gluing the pieces down, I like to use just like a waxed paper plate. With the wax, it makes it easy to pick the things off and it doesn't stick to it. There are the silicone pads that you can use. I am using both a glue gun and Mod Podge. I think Mod Podge works really great for being able to lay it down. It also gives it a nice layer afterwards. for this particular print, once I had it on there, I did do a coating of Mod Podge right over the top of it to give it an extra protection, make sure everything was really glued down, staying down, so I wouldn't have to worry about it. I'm taking it out of the frame right now, so you can kind of see it gives a little bit of a shiny appearance, but I'm using Mod Podge matte, so it's not too shiny. But if you really like the idea of shininess, use the Mod Podge glossy, or they even have Mod Podge that has the glitter in it, so that would give a really fun look. And then here you can see the examples of the buttons. Like even with this one, I just Mod Podged right over some of the buttons and it was fine. Helped get them on, but you can see the 3D layer of that. So just really fun. You could even have put a little bit of stuffing behind that and then laid that down if you really wanted it to stick out. So this is, again, one of those projects where the sky's the limit. Whatever you kind of think of that you want to do, you can go for it. And you can put them on any kinds of picture frames. I like a picture frame because then all you have to do is take the back off and you have a fantastic surface of which to work for. You've got the hard cardboard. So I would do it right onto that. Picture frames usually come with a thin piece of paper. You could Mod Podge onto that if you wanted to be able to switch them out. You could do that if you wanted to, or even use this as your size to put onto a piece of cardboard. If you didn't want to use this backing, if you really wanted to make it thick, then you could probably use like the back of a cereal box. That would work really well. Use this to trace out your size, put it on there. If you're going to do the 2 layers of like the cardboard and the backing of this, then you're probably not going to be able to put your glass back in because it would probably be too thick. So just be aware of that. Another thing to be aware of when you're doing your picture, see where it fits. Many times you can see in this picture frame, there's a little lip, a tiny little lip. So your picture goes in, but you're going to lose a tiny bit of your picture for that little ledge. So if you're doing something that goes all the way out to the edges, be wary of that. And a lot of times what I will do is I will actually take the board, I will take that inner, take the glass out, just have my frame, put the piece of paper or the cardboard that I'm using into it like that, trace along the outside edge. That way you're going to know exactly what's going to be viewed from your picture frame. You won't see that little lip, so then you'll be able to know, oh, I have up into this edge. It'll be there to go through. So you can do that. Or if you don't care, just go right to the edges, and if you lose a little bit of your scene, you can lose it. So again, these can be made for just straight picture frames to hang on your wall. You can do the same idea to make greeting cards, which is a lot of fun. Just any kind of decorations that you want to put something on. So we have our basic materials. Scissors, fabric scissors work really great because you're going to be cutting fabric. Sometimes regular shears just are not sharp enough to cut fabric. So if you have a good pair of fabric scissors, I would use those. But scissors, some kind of pen, your fabric, Mod Podge, or any kind of school glue mixed with a little bit of water to make it a little thinner, and a hot glue gun if you want to apply 3D things. Mod Podge does work for that, but you may not, if it's a really big piece, you may need something a little bit stronger like your hot glue gun for that. So let's turn the camera around and get started. For the picture that I'm going to do, I actually took the time to lay it all out and even taped it so in case it would move. Just laid my images out to see what I wanted it to look like. Played around with placement. Then once I had it the way that I wanted it to be, I then took a picture of it with my camera so I could then go back and reference where I wanted it to go, because I'm going to have to actually move everything off because I'm going to have to work from the back to the front. So I wanted to remember how I placed it down. There's nothing to say that you have to do that, but it's a nice way to get the layout. And you can see that I did. I laid it out on the back of the picture frame. This particular frame came, instead of with the paper insert like the other one had, this one had a cardboard insert. So I'm actually going to be using this as my background. And you can see the faint lines that I wrote. This is where I know my picture is going to be. So if there's anything that I don't want in the picture, I'm going to know that I have to go all the way on the inside of that. So this frame that I'm using, it has a mat and the frame itself. So I'm going to take that apart, just flip it over, move my pieces out. So this is the board that if you actually wanted to work on this, you can. So this is what you could use, or the piece of paper or cardboard that goes with it. And again, if you want something sturdier, this is, I got Dollar Tree pictures, so this is a little bit flimsy. So that's why I like the idea of the cardboard, just to give it a little bit of strength, since I will be gluing things on and it'll be 3D. If your picture frame that you're using either doesn't have a paper or a cardboard or have anything there, you can use a cereal box. That's a great way to get a big piece of relatively strong cardboard to use. So I will not be using my mat, so I'm going to take that away, because you can see how much smaller that would even make that picture. If you wanted to use your mat, you can do that, lay everything out, and then you would have a mat around it. Again, your choice. So I'm personally not going to be using that. I'm going to use this paper, so I don't need my frame for right now. I can set that aside. I'm going to be working directly onto this piece of paper. And I can use my piece of plate to glue on. I also have, because this is a bigger piece, I have a Dollar Tree plastic placemat. This works great to be able, because you can see you can glue right onto it and make a mess on it, and it doesn't matter. It was only $1.25. I also have my work surface covered. I am using just a clear plastic dry cleaner's bag. So this is great in case you get any glue or Mod Podge anywhere around. That works great for that. So let's start working on the picture. So let's start with the background. I'm going to take everything off. And I've decided I want to use this blue piece of fabric. I like to use Mod Podge in a cup, so I'm not letting the whole bottle dry out. And I enjoy using the foam brushes. I think this works. It coats much better than a regular bristle brush. I can get a good smooth coating. So with this background, I'm just going to go ahead, basically cover my entire piece of cardboard. If you were working on a type of picture that had different parts to it, kind of like my original picture of the beach that I showed you, that has different parts to it, then you want to just glue in the parts as you go along. This one, because I am using a background sky and a background grass, I'm just going to put both of those pieces on right away, so I know where I'm gluing. So let's put on the blue. When you're using fabric, you probably want to look at your fabric and decide, is there a front or a back? Because one part is kind of shiny, the other part is a little more dull. Decide which part you want. I am going to probably go, I want to give myself a little bit of an edge. In fact, I think what I'm going to do to make it really go on easy, I want the shiny side, so I'm going to put that side down. I am then going to take my paper. I think I'm going to go over the top. With this, I want to give it a little bit of an edge if I can. So I'm going to set that down, smooth it down, and I'm going to take all my little flowers off here. I need to see how far I want to go up. I don't have a lot of overlap, and I'm probably not going to use this blue piece of fabric for anything else. So I'm just going to let that go all the way down and put it all the way. If there's such an overlap, you know, if it was that much, then I would probably cut the piece of fabric, but there's really not that much overlap. So I'm just going to let that go. You just want to smooth it on down. I have already pre-cut all my pieces of how I wanted them to look, because I cut out all those other little flowers. There's tons of little fuzzies on here. So I just want to remove some of those before I glue this down. That kind of gave like a hill type of idea. So I want to go at least that far down. I'm going to press it here, but because I had an overlap, now I'm going to glue right onto my fabric. The great thing about Mod Podge is that it dries clear, so you don't have to worry about it seeping through. I'm going to smooth that up and flip the whole thing over, because now what I want to do is put a little bit on this edge and put some on this edge, put some on the side, and the side, I don't have a lot on this other side. I'm going to cut that. I don't need that piece. I don't need that much of an overlap, so I'm going to cut some of that off. I'm going to cut some of this off. So now I can just fold that down, smooth it, push and smooth. I can fold this part over, get that glued in, go up a little bit more. I don't have to worry too much about gluing to the sides here, because it will be in the picture frame, so that will also help hold it down. But to me, it's just easier. Glue it all the way down, and then you know you don't have to worry about it. Smooth it down. Smooth that part down. With the corners, you can either fold it neatly like a present, or I'm just going to cut that because this is my back and I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to add a little bit more glue because you can see it didn't catch. You could also let it dry and put another coat of glue on there if you'd like. I don't know if this is enough to really fold over. I'll try. It's tiny. Yeah, that doesn't really want to fold over all that much. But again, that's going to be sitting in my picture frame. So I really don't need to worry about it because it will be caught in the picture frame. But that did fold over a little bit. So now you can see I have my blue sky. And my grass. So that's what that looks. You can see the glue started to seep through a little bit. That's not going to show. That will dry clear. And I am going to be putting an entire coat of Mod Podge on when this is all finished. So I don't really need to worry about that. So I'm going to take my tree, because that is the biggest part of my picture. Lay that down again to see where I want that to go. I am going to keep, for right now, I'm going to keep the tape on there so I see exactly where it is where I want to put this, because I did set it to be overhanging a bit. So I just want to see that come back on, because again, remember, you're right to the edge. So you'll have parts that won't show afterwards. So now I think I have that pretty much where I want it. So I'm going to glue in spurts. I'm going to take that, lay my tree down. Again, this is all going to be covered, so if the glue seeps out, I am not going to worry about it. I'm going to glue. It's better because it really holds on well if you can overlap and flip over. So that's the idea of that. You're just going to lay and glue your pieces down as you go. You can see for the birds and the nest, let me see if I can take this tape off here without ruining the entire nest. I had a piece of faux leather. Just want to see if I can catch that off. Well, maybe not. I'll pull it off this way. So you can see I had a piece of faux leather, just cut little tiny strips and went back and forth, and I did that for the nest. And I had some sequined birds. I thought those would be cute. The leaves I cut out of the fabric, and again, I cut all of these flowers out. So just to show you, if you want to take a piece of fabric that has a lot of images on it, you can see how easy. Let me cut this flower right here. So all I'm going to do is literally cut around the edge. Now with this pattern, because it has the white in the background, for this flower, I'm going to cut in a little bit, lose a little bit of my red, but then that way I know I don't have any of the white showing, because my background is going to be green. So if I have any of that white showing, it's going to show. Or with some of the flowers, what I did is I actually cut a very, very thin border of white around it, because there was no way with some of the images, the way the material was on there was no way I was going to get the white out in some of the spots. So to make it look consistent, I decided to give it a white border, because again, this is a whimsical print. This is not for what I'm making. I'm not making something that is supposed to look realistic. I wanted to go very whimsical with my look. If you want to go realistic, you can, and certainly, that's another look which is fabulous. But you can see how easy it is to just cut around a print. Here's an example of the daisy. How I wanted those leaves, but I really did not want to take the time to cut in between there. Also, this flower, there was no way I could cut all of those out, because The dots are just there. They're not connected to anything. So there was no way I was going to cut that out, but I really wanted to use that flower. So to do that, that's why I left a white edging around most of my flowers, because that way it makes them look consistent and doesn't really look bad. It's just that's a different look. And then you can see with the buttons, I have a lot of really unique buttons. I'm not going to take the shanks off the back of the button. I'm just going to glue them directly down onto the fabric. I have this beautiful button. To me, it looked like the sun. So I want that to stick up and give it some 3D appearance. So I'm not going to worry about cutting that part off. For the sun, I definitely am going to need to use my glue gun. Put a good generous dollop on my bead. Place my sun. I'm going to go down and in a little bit. This is where you might want to take your frame beforehand just to make sure, lay that back in there to see. That's why I went down. If I would have gone right up to the corner, I would have lost a little bit of that sun. So you might even want to do with some of your 3D elements, you might want to put your frame back there so you know, like, oh, I can't go all the way up here. I have to go down and in just to see where your elements lie. So that's how you attach a button. This is how you cut the flowers, cut your materials. If you want to draw a particular picture on your fabric, you can either draw right on the right side or draw from the back. Just remember, if you're drawing from the back side, what you cut out is going to be reversed. So you can see with this picture, my tree trunks, this one goes all the way out to this side. This is small, goes to that side. I drew it on the opposite side. So I actually drew it where this was here. But then when I flipped it over, had to say, oh, well, this tree branch is going to go over here. So for me, that was not a problem. But if that is definitely something that you want a particular direction and don't want to worry about having to go backwards, this is definitely the way to do it. And in fact, let me use this fabric. You can see I went on the back because I thought it would be easier, but then I had to reverse it. If I'm going to draw a tree on this side, I'm going to go on my front. I'm going to know that this is exactly how it's going to look. Technically, I'm drawing a little bit bigger than what I want it to look like, because the best way to draw and cut is cut outside, inside of the lines. So I'm going to bring that up, connect that. So I have a good basic tree shape. So when I'm going to cut this, I'm going to cut on the inside of that line, because I do not want that black line to show. Because if I were going to try to cut right on the line, you can see like here, you're still seeing that outline. And then it's very difficult to try to go back in to cut it. So this way, it's much easier. you can see how on this particular material it did bleed through. So if I did it just on the outside when I flipped it over, I would be able to see some of those lines. So that's why I feel it's just much easier to draw your pattern, draw it a little bit bigger if you can, and then definitely cut right along on the inside of those lines. That way you get a nice clear edge. So you can draw basically anything on any fabric. Just be aware of what kind of marker you're using and how it's going to show through. But using lace, I'm going to be putting lace down. And I really want this to be 3D. So before I glue my top of my tree down, I want my cloud to be above and over my sun a little bit. So I'll be laying that down and going 3D. And I want the tree to be behind it so you can see it's still showing through. Lace is really fun to use because you can see through the lace. You'll be able to see your background. So that's why I didn't glue my total tree. Think about, that's why the best way to do it, set your pattern out first so you can see what you want to do. I had this all laid out, and then I decided I wanted a cloud, and then decided, oh, I want the cloud to be behind the tree. I could even take another piece of lace and do a wispy cloud just as a line behind that tree and have it showing part way. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I glued everything. So that's why I say lay your picture out first if you want to have an idea of what you want to do. I've shown you how to do the background. I've shown you how to lay out your picture, cut out your designs, choose your fun little elements, and how to put it back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the time now to finish this picture and then come back at the end, because everything now is just a matter of gluing. So I would just like you to see how to glue it at the end, because again, this is very self-explanatory. The tape really helps if you want to use Scotch tape to lay your patterns down, because now I can lay this back down and say, did I really want it to go there? Did I want it to go somewhere else? How did I have those leaves? I placed them so nicely, and then when I had to take it off to glue, I forgot where I put them. So taping like this really helps, and the picture of being able to go back into your photos to say, how did I have that laid out? So I can go back to my phone and look at the picture and say, oh, this is where I wanted that. That's how I wanted that to be. So that is extremely helpful. So I'm going to take the time now to glue this all down, and we'll come back. So with the magic of video, it's all finished. This is what it looks like. I ended up outlining the outside of all my flowers, the hill, adding in some little grass. I outlined the tree, and I also outlined a little border around the cloud. I took some acrylic paint pens that I have. I felt that after I put the Mod Podge on, it got a little too dark and I couldn't really see a big contrast, and the flowers got a little dull, so I painted over all of those. That is one thing to note. Depending on the fabric that you have, it can turn dark. Like was a satin material, so once I put the Mod Podge on that, it got a little darker. This was just cotton and dark already. So I'm going to turn the camera around. I'll show you how we're going to put it in the picture frame. I'm not going to use the glass, so I'm simply going to take this, put this down. Again, just to note, if you really wanted to make this a lot stiffer, put a couple layers of Mod Podge on the back of that. Put a layer on, let it dry, put a layer on, let it dry, put another layer on, let it dry. That would get it to be a little bit more stiff, because you can see it did wrinkle a little bit in there for me. This isn't very precious, so I'm not going to mind the wrinkles. I'm just going to leave it as is. But if you're looking for something really nice and smooth, add those couple extra layers of Mod Podge to the back of your frame, of your paper, whatever you're using. That will give it a little extra stiffness. So I'm just going to pop it down in. Place it down. Put the back in. Push those all the way down. You're going to have a lot more space since the glass isn't in here. I wanted to show it to you without the glass. So there you go. Cute little frame. Can stand wherever you want. This is a great project to do with kids. They have absolutely wild imagination, so just give them a whole bunch of fabric and see what they can come up with. So as you can see, this was really easy, a lot of fun, great project to be able to do with kids or in big groups. Again, sky's the limit as to what you can make. Thank you for crafting with me. Until next time, this is Crafting with Kimberly, Kimberly Canale. Bye.